You did not lose them in one big fight. You lost them in a tiny moment so small you probably did not even notice it. And that is exactly why it ruined everything. An empath usually does not burst when they are hurt. They fade. They go quiet. They step back when something deep inside finally stops making noise. And here is the part most people never hear. That silence did not begin when they walked away. It started much earlier. It began under the surface, deep in the back of their mind, quietly storing every mixed signal you thought they would ignore. People call them emotional, but they miss the more dangerous truth. They are deeply aware. They feel everything, yes, but they also track everything. Every shift in your tone, every half-truth, every strange pause, every moment your words said one thing and your energy said another. Stay with me, because this is where it starts to sting. While you were busy thinking they would always understand you, they were slowly seeing that you never truly tried to understand them. Still, they did not make a scene. They did not force a hard talk. And that was your first mistake. Because open conflict is obvious. What an empath does is much harder to catch. It happens underneath the surface, quietly, subconsciously. Little by little, they stop burying only their pain. They start burying their hope in you. And that is where the real danger begins. The moment an empath stops expecting anything from you is the same moment they stop needing you, and you usually will not notice it while it happens. There is no loud ending, no dramatic goodbye, no perfect closure, just a silent inner shift where you slowly stop existing in their emotional world, even while they are still standing right there in front of you. That is the part people miss. They will still smile at you. They will still answer your messages. They will still show up, but not in the way you think. On the outside, they may look the same. On the inside, the distance has already begun. Most people cannot read this because they are addicted to visible reactions. They think love ends with shouting, tears, slammed doors, and chaos. But often it ends in silence. A silence made from disappointment that was never spoken out loud. A silence built when the deeper mind understands something the conscious mind keeps trying to deny. You are no longer safe for me. And once that thought takes shape, it does not fight with you. It does not beg. It does not explain itself again and again. It simply starts changing the whole emotional reality. Now listen closely, because this is the line that changes everything. An empath does not erase you because they stopped loving you. They erase you because loving you began to feel like betraying themselves. And a person who feels deeply can survive pain for a long time, but they cannot keep living in self-betrayal forever. So what happens next is quiet but severe. Their mind splits in two directions. One part still remembers who you used to be. The other part sees very clearly who you have become. That tension starts pulling them apart from the inside. But instead of turning all that pressure toward you, they turn it inward. They ask themselves hard questions. Why am I still here? Why do I keep accepting this? Why does this keep feeling wrong? And those questions do not get softer with time. They get louder. They dig deeper. They keep returning until the answer can no longer be avoided. And when that answer finally lands, the shift is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is final. If you know, you know. Once that inner decision is made, the rest is only a matter of time. Because once the deeper mind chooses, the conscious mind follows. And when an empath finally decides, they do not simply leave you. They remove the emotional version of you that once mattered to them. That is why by the time you feel something changing, you are already late. You are not losing them in real time. You are losing them in reverse. Every memory starts to lose color. Every old moment gets reviewed under a new light. Every connection you thought was solid begins to come apart in silence. And here is the haunting part. You may still be talking to them while they are privately saying goodbye. You may still think everything is manageable while they are emotionally packing up and leaving the room in their mind. You may still believe there is plenty of time left. But there is not. The second you start to notice the distance, it is usually already over. That is when most people panic. Suddenly they try harder. Suddenly they become sweeter. Suddenly they change their tone, their effort, their behavior. But here is the brutal truth. You are not competing with another person. You are competing with a version of them that has already learned how to exist without you. And that version is steady, calm, detached, clear, almost impossible to reach. Because once an empath gets there, they are no longer reacting to your presence. They are answering to their own survival. They are finally listening to themselves. And that is what makes it feel irreversible. Staying with you now feels like moving backward. And once the human mind grows beyond a painful pattern, it refuses to shrink itself just to keep someone comfortable. So they do not fight. They do not blame. They do not even hate. They do something far more unsettling. They stop feeling. And when an empath feels nothing for you, you do not just lose their love. You lose your place in their inner world. So now comes the question that keeps echoing long after they are gone. What did you do that made someone who once felt everything for you feel absolutely nothing? The answer is not loud. It is layered. It did not happen in one shocking scene. You did not break them in a day. You trained their deeper mind over time, slowly, repeatedly, quietly. You taught them that their depth would not be matched, that their care would not be met with the same care, that their honesty would be greeted with delay, distance, or emotional shortcuts. And once that lesson becomes real inside them, it is almost impossible to undo. But here's where it gets even darker. An empath does not only feel pain, they study it. They go back through moments not because they want to suffer, but because they need to understand. They replay the details, the tone, the silence, the look on your face, the timing of your words. Not what you said alone, but why you said it. Not what you did alone, but what your actions quietly revealed. And this is where the whole thing turns into something far more intense than heartbreak. Because once they begin to see your patterns, they cannot unsee them. The inconsistency, the easy excuses, the small dismissals hidden inside ordinary behavior, the emotional laziness dressed up as normal, the lack of care buried inside polite words. Suddenly you are no longer confusing to them. You are readable, predictable, and nothing drains emotional attachment faster than seeing the same disappointing pattern too clearly. Let that sink in. What once felt complicated starts looking simple. What once felt hopeful starts looking obvious. And when that happens, the mystery is gone. The illusion collapses. The emotional bond loses oxygen because they are no longer relating to your potential. They are relating to your pattern, and a pattern tells the truth faster than promises ever can. Once they grasp that truth, they stop trying to force meaning into what keeps hurting them, and something inside them begins returning home. That is the part many people never understand. The empath is not really detaching from you. They are returning to themselves. The energy you were receiving from them was never truly yours. It was borrowed, it was offered, it was a gift. And now, piece by piece, they are taking it back. Emotion by emotion, hope by hope, layer by layer, until one day there is nothing left in your hands to hold. And this is where people make the final wrong move. They try to wake up the old version of the empath. They bring up memories. They mention better days. They tell stories about what you once had. They try to stir old feelings and call it love. But what they do not understand is this. The past no longer feels warm to the empath. It feels misleading. It feels edited. Because now they can see what they missed before. They can see the imbalance. They can see the cracks that were there the whole time. And once awareness replaces illusion, attachment has nowhere left to hide. This is why the shift becomes permanent. The empath does not only move on, they rewire. Their standards rise. Their tolerance drops. Their access closes, not because they are bitter, not because they are cruel, but because they are clear. And clarity can be harsh. It does not bow to history. It does not care how long you have known someone. It does not care how strong it once felt. It only cares whether something is true now. And once the truth is fully seen, there is no honest path back to pretending. That chapter ends right there. So if you are still watching, understand this part deeply. The silence is not random. The distance is not confusion. It is a result. It is what happens when someone finally sees clearly what they kept trying not to see. And once an empath sees clearly, they stop begging life to make the wrong thing feel right. Now here comes the part that unsettles most people the most. When an empath erases you, they do not miss you the way you imagine they will. They are not sitting there wishing the story had ended differently. They are not replaying the good parts and starving for your return. They are not romanticizing what was lost. Because in their mind, nothing deeply valuable was lost. Something misunderstood was finally released. And that is the point where your own mind starts to spiral. Because you do miss them. You feel the absence. You notice the quiet. You sense that something real is gone. But you cannot reach it anymore. You cannot call it back. You cannot unlock the part of them that once made space for you. And that creates a very different kind of pain. The pain of being emotionally shut out. You were not simply left behind. You were removed from a place you thought would always stay open to you, and no amount of pressure can push that door back open. Because access to an empath is not earned through chasing. It is not regained through panic. It is not restored through louder effort after long neglect. It comes through alignment, through emotional honesty, through safety, through steady care. And once that alignment breaks, you are no longer a match for their inner world. So they do not always block you. They do not always argue. They do not always explain what happened in detail. Because explanations belong to people who are still emotionally tied into the outcome. And they are not. They have already done the grieving in private. They have already processed the ending in silence. They have already accepted the truth long before the final exit happens. So when they eventually leave, it feels sudden only to you. To them, it feels late, overdue, like a door that should have closed much earlier. And the hardest truth waiting at the end is simple. You did not lose them when they walked away. You lost them when they no longer felt safe enough to stay. Everything after that was only delay. That is what hurts people the most. They think the relationship ended at the visible goodbye, but the real ending happened much earlier, in private, in silence, in all the moments when the empath kept feeling less seen, less held, less understood. By the time the body leaves, the heart has often been gone for a long time. And now what remains for you is something almost impossible to repair because the version of them that loved you in the old way no longer exists. Not because they vanished, but because they changed. They grew beyond the version of you that could not meet them where they were. That is the part no one warns you about. When an empath erases you, they do not only leave your life, they leave the role you had in their story. They stop carrying your meaning. They stop protecting your image. They stop keeping your place alive in their emotional world. It is as if your importance slowly dissolves. And that can feel unbearable if you were depending on their softness, their patience, their endless ability to understand. But here's the truth. Their softness was never permission to wound them. Their patience was never proof they would stay forever. Their understanding was never a blank check for emotional carelessness. At some point, even the deepest heart reaches its line. At some point, even the most forgiving person stops translating your behavior into excuses that make you easier to keep. And when that happens, the inner bond snaps without noise. They stop trying to rescue the connection. They stop trying to explain your actions in kind ways. They stop trying to carry both sides. And from the outside, it can look cold. It can look sudden. It can look like they became someone else overnight. But they did not become someone else. They simply stopped abandoning themselves. Watch this closely because this is where people get it wrong. They call the empath distant. They call them changed. They call them hard to reach. But what really happened is simple. The empath stopped giving access to a place you kept mishandling. And once that happens, your usual moves stop working. The guilt does not land. The charm does not land. The sudden affection does not land. The old memories do not land. Because all of that is trying to reach a version of them that no longer lives there. That version learned too much. It saw too clearly. It finally understood that love without safety becomes damage, and care without being cared for becomes depletion. So now when you come back with fresh effort, they do not see rescue. They see timing. They see a reaction to their withdrawal, not a true awakening. They see urgency because access is gone, not because understanding finally arrived. And that difference matters more than most people realize, because empaths are not only feeling people. They are pattern-reading people. They notice when your tenderness appears only after distance. They notice when your honesty shows up only after consequences. They notice when your effort suddenly rises only when they are almost out the door. And once they connect those dots, something changes forever. The old emotional spell breaks. What used to move them now feels rehearsed. What used to soften them now feels late. That is why your strongest comeback can still meet a blank wall. Not because they enjoy punishing you. Not because they became cruel, but because their system no longer reads you as safe. And once the nervous system stops trusting, words alone cannot rebuild what repeated behavior damaged. That takes real change, deep change, proven change. And even then, some doors do not reopen. Not because the empath hates you, but because they finally love their peace more than your potential. Let that line sit for a second. They love their peace more than your promises. They love their clarity more than your explanations. They love the calm they found without you more than the confusion they kept surviving with you. And when a person reaches that place, they are not playing a game. They are protecting a truth they had to suffer to learn. So if you are wondering when it all really shifted, it happened in the repeated moments that looked small to you but felt heavy to them. It happened every time they spoke from the heart and felt brushed aside. It happened every time they gave grace and received less than honesty back. It happened every time they had to explain what should have been felt without explanation. It happened in all the subtle moments where your attention was present but your care was not. You may have thought those moments were too minor to matter. They were not. For an empath, little things are rarely little. Not because they are overly dramatic, but because small moments reveal big truths. A careless tone can expose hidden resentment. A delayed response can expose low priority. A cold reaction in a vulnerable moment can expose the entire emotional structure of a bond. That is why they remember what others forget. They are not collecting flaws to use against you. They are collecting evidence to understand what is real. And once enough evidence stacks up, denial becomes impossible. Then comes the withdrawal, first emotional, then mental, then physical. They may still be near you, but the warmth is different. The presence is thinner, the openness is gone, conversations become shorter. Their eyes stop searching yours for reassurance. Their spirit stops reaching. And you may mistake that for mood, stress, or temporary distance. But deep down, something final is taking shape. They are learning how to live without leaning toward you. They are practicing emotional independence while standing right beside you. And by the time you feel the full coldness of that shift, they have already built inner muscles you never saw them training. They already know how to survive your absence because they had to survive your inconsistency first. That is the painful irony. They did not become strong after leaving. They became strong while still staying, in all the lonely moments when they were forced to comfort themselves inside a connection that no longer felt safe. And that is why the end feels so different with them. It is not usually explosive. It is surgical, clean, quiet, unshakable. No giant speech, no endless back and forth, no dramatic attempt to make you finally understand everything you refuse to see in real time. They know that if you did not understand while they were bleeding softly in front of you, you probably will not understand because of one final speech. So they save their breath. They stop performing pain for people who only respond to spectacle. They stop translating their silence for someone who ignored the language of care. They stop trying to make their hurt look big enough to be believed. And once they make that choice, their exit becomes almost impossible to stop. Because now it is no longer about emotion alone. It is about self-respect. It is about inner alignment. It is about refusing to keep shrinking just to preserve a bond that kept asking them to betray themselves. This is the point where they become hard to read. Not because they are confused, but because they are done explaining what should already be clear. They may still be polite. They may still be calm. They may even still care in some distant human way. But the intimate access is gone. The raw openness is gone. The old softness that wrapped around you so easily is gone. And if you are still waiting for one more chance to bring it all back, understand this. People often think an empath's deepest power is how much they can love. It is not. Their deepest power is what happens when they finally stop giving that love to the wrong place. That is when everything changes. That is when they become still. That is when they become certain. That is when the person you thought would always leave a door open quietly locks it, not out of revenge, but out of truth. And truth, once fully felt, does not usually turn around. So in the end, the real loss is bigger than most people realize. You do not just lose their affection. You lose the version of reality where they still saw the best in you. You lose the reflection they once held up that made you feel chosen, forgiven, and emotionally understood. You lose the space where your rough edges were handled with patience. You lose the quiet mercy that kept giving your behavior softer meanings than it deserved. And once that mercy is gone, what remains is just the truth. Raw, clear, hard to argue with. They are no longer filling in the blanks for you. They are no longer helping your intentions look better than your actions. They are no longer building bridges with their empathy while you keep setting fire to them with your inconsistency. That work is over. And yes, that can haunt you because now you are left with the echo of what was offered and the sharp knowledge of how badly you handled it. But for them, the haunting ends when clarity begins. Once they see the full picture, their peace starts returning. Their energy comes back. Their center comes back. The confusion lifts. The emotional noise settles. And little by little, they stop carrying your weight inside their chest. That is why when they are truly done, there is often no rage left. No dramatic revenge. No obsession. Just distance. Just closure built in private. Just a calm refusal to reopen a wound they finally let close. And maybe that is the hardest part to accept. Not that they left. Not that they changed. But that they can become fully okay without you while you are still trying to understand when the ending really began. It began the moment they felt alone with you too many times. It began the moment safety turned into strain. It began the moment their heart started whispering a truth their mind did not want to hear. And once that whisper became clear, the story was already over.